to Mountaineer Farm Talk. My name is JJ Barrett. I'm the Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources from Wood County. And with me, my co-host, John David Johnson. What's up, JD?
Oh, not much. Just out and about this morning and got a call off guard, so I'm in a remote location.
And of course, we've got Evan MacGyver Wilson. Evan, what's up, buddy?
Oh, it's doing good down here. Got a little light showers going this morning here in Wayne today.
Yes, unusually warm temperatures here, maybe the last up to 81 this week one day. So, like just remind everyone, Mountaineer Farm Talk, we're a weekly podcast featuring interviews with extension professionals and other agricultural experts about timely topics important to West Virginia agriculture. Our mission is simple: to provide educational, research-based information to people all across the Mountain State. And today we have a special guest, Lisa Jones from the Small Farm Center at WVU. Lisa, how are you today?
Hey, JJ. Thank you for inviting me to be here as your special guest today. I'm so excited to come and talk to you about direct marketing in West Virginia.
All right. We are sure are glad to have you. Lisa, just give us a little bit of background about the Small Farm Center, what you got, some of the things that you provide to producers all across West Virginia. Tell us a little bit about Small Farm Center.
Yeah, so thank you again for letting me be here. I am Lisa Jones. I am the program coordinator at the West Virginia University Extension Service Small Farm Center. And just for a quick background, so you know I'm not just pulling your leg, I actually managed one of the, if not the most successful farmers markets in the state. So I do know a little bit about direct marketing, and I did that for
which
4
market
years.
was that, Lisa?
So I was the manager at the Morgantown Farmers Market here in
Okay.
Morgantown, where I live still, and we're home to
Right.
WVU. But the Small Farm Center, we kind of do a little bit of everything depending on what the current needs are of farmers in the state. We do a decent amount focused around marketing, but really whatever those needs are. So we act as outreach and networking to farmers and serve farmers across the state. So we are at the state level and not just the county level. And one of the biggest events that we offer is our Small Farm Conference, an annual event. It is typically hosted in Charleston, West Virginia. We normally have around 550 attendees at that event, and we'll have topics from animal production, horticulture, marketing, farm to school, a little bit of everything. So whatever those requests are, and then we pull in excellent keynote speakers from around the country. We'll pull in experts from the state, growers, extension specialists. We'll pull in regional experts. It's always a really good program. Of course, I say that and I'm biased because I do help put it together.
Yes, I know that you've kind of taken over for our previous director, Tom McConnell, did that for years. That Small Farm Conference is a great opportunity for a lot of producers, not only in West Virginia. Don't we get a lot of people from out of state to that conference as well?
Yes, we definitely do. So West Virginia, of course, is our most attendance. However, because of the location and just the amount of opportunities that we have at the conference, we have a lot of individuals that will attend regionally. I have a group that almost always attends from Maryland. Lots of people from Ohio and Kentucky will come. The one year we actually had 17 different states that were represented at the conference, which was really exciting. So we are making definitely an impact. Because of COVID this past year in February, whenever we offered the event, I actually was able to make up 4,000 miles between 3 attendees. One was from Canada, one was from San Antonio, Texas, and the other one was out in Wyoming. So I kind of wish we had some sort of furthest distance traveled type of virtual prize.
Yeah, I just go every year for the coffee cup, because we get the coffee cup if you do the survey. Or I can't think of what the company is that makes them.
So Fiestaware.
Yeah, Fiestaware.
Fiestaware is the company that we use every single year for our event. And my cup is in the other room, or else I would have that right here for you with my coffee in it. But they're a West Virginia based company. So we order in cups in bulk from them every single year and give them out for individuals that are filling out our survey. So we need your survey information that helps us organize and plan the conference every single year. And that is our gift to you for thanking you for filling those out.
Now, what is the conference going to look like this year? Is it going to be a virtual platform or in person? And do you have any dates kind of set for February?
Oh, those are the hard questions. Yeah, so I do have set dates for the end of February. The 23rd through the 26th of 22 is the plan for the next conference. That might change. Right now, I do have the building reserved for in person. However, due to the continued COVID spikes and what that's looking like at the holidays, if what this year brings us is mimicking last year, then we'll end up I have concerns about hosting that event in person. So we'll probably do one more year worth of virtual conference and then bring it back in person in 23. And that way we're taking everyone's safety and wellness into account, just because I know those booster shots are going out and they're just starting. So we really want to make sure that all of our attendees are our priority.
And I think,
Lisa,
with the
go ahead.
aging farmers, I think they would really appreciate that. And I think a lot of them are kind of getting in tune with the more technical side, the Zoom and all those kind of podcasts and whatnot. So I think farmers are actually, embracing it more than they ever have. So did you have a good turnout? What was your turnout last year looking at virtual versus in person? I mean, you had a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, we did, which was really exciting. I did have concerns just because we do have the issues with broadband here. And originally we did discuss having small groups happening at the extension offices, but even then we weren't really comfortable encouraging that type of format. But in person, we normally have that 550 number. Virtually, we ended up having 715 attendees. So I was really happy to see the amount of participation. Unfortunately, I know there are always people that will end up missing, but I was able to bring in people that normally go away for the winter. I have one lady who reached out to me that was so excited because she spends the winter in South Carolina with her family, but she lives in West Virginia, and she was just tickled to death that she was able to participate even at a distance this year.
Yeah, Lisa, speaking of COVID, let's move right into some of the things that we talked about before. Of course, the pandemic has affected about every aspect of our lives. What changes that you think have occurred as far as selling products directly from the farm due to the pandemic? And do you think those changes are good or bad, or what's your opinion on some of that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's opinions on both sides, I guess, and I feel like with the negative also comes some positive experiences. So the most immediate effect that was seen with COVID early on was concerns around practices with health and safety, and that was for farm owners, farm laborers, and for our customers. In some areas, people wanted to see visibly that these additional measures were put in place. So they wanted to see that you had hand washing stations. They want to see that you have sanitizer in multiple locations. Specifically thinking maybe at like a farmer's market, or if you're doing your CSA pickup, or you have this on-farm stand. There's all of these different measures that you can put in place. So I noticed whenever I would go to a direct marketing location that individuals be wearing masks, which I know always makes me feel better because I have a immune compromised husband and a baby. So all of those types of things were excellent. Early on, some people were wearing gloves. A lot of times they would use the ones for sampling, even though sampling was not allowed per our state Department of Agriculture. That was a rule that was put out like very early on. I saw some places that would put up barriers at their checkout counters just to make sure that we are able to still function, but we have to put these social distancing measures in place and make sure that the health and safety is number one. That has to be priority. Even now, I mean, that was something that was that happened early on in the pandemic, but we still see those practices continuing as the pandemic continues to surge within our communities. So that initial desire for social distancing, we saw lots of drive-through farmers markets. There were curbside pickup options for certain places. They're kind of trending with the corporate side and just what was happening nationally. There was a big spike in web-based sales or web-based marketing. Some farms were doing home delivery, which is amazing. And a couple even were experimenting with like meal type services similar to HelloFresh and Blue Apron and all of those other services that exist like, that people know about nationally. And personally, again, as a local food consumer, those last two I found super exciting. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of people in my area offering it, but that is something that I think is really an untapped market for farmers. Maybe a little harder to take on as an individual business, but if you work in a co-op or any kind of community-owned organization, that is something to definitely check out.
Yeah, I think that but just exactly what you were saying, the the pandemic, some of the shortages in the stores, or they're even for a while they were. I'm trying to think. They were saying you could only buy so much milk, or you could only buy so many items of certain cans of certain things. So, do you think that kind of drove some of the people to the farms, which I guess is a good thing?
Yeah, so early on in that pandemic, we saw those supply chain hiccups that you mentioned, and they were happening at major retail and big box stores. And unfortunately, that also happened at the same time that panic buying was occurring, which really just exacerbated the issue. And that left these shelves at stores that you normally would go to empty. And that naturally scared some of our consumers, or even a lot of our consumers, and that did push them to form more relationships with those local farmers and buy more products locally. And for the people and the businesses that were able to take advantage of that and form those relationships, you really build the trust with your customer, your consumer at that point, and just that becomes this beneficial impact, what we like to call like a sticky customer, somebody that is going to stay with your business for the long term. And those are the people that you want because they are loyal, they love your product, and even after changes with the pandemic are, I don't want to say over, but are calmed down a bit, they're not necessarily, those people aren't necessarily going to be swayed by alternatives. So those are the types of customers you definitely want. And you can still take advantage if you're wanting to build upon that. Like think about those sticky customers and what you can offer somebody to let them know that your farm, you're not going anywhere. You can provide them with meat or cheese or vegetables, and you're a staple within the community that they should definitely support.
Yeah, I think definitely I even talked to several consumers that had never tried. They had always went to wherever, Aldi's or Walmart or grocery store, and they had actually never tried sausage or hamburger or roast or um, I'm just maybe more on the livestock side, and after they tried something straight from the farm, they were just talking about how they couldn't believe how it tasted so much better, and they and they just like you were saying, they got that relationship with the farmer, talking to them and making their order and all that stuff, and I think that was a real big positive if they were trying to get some positives out of this pandemic for sure.
And another positive, JJ, is a lot of people are going to the farms, but a lot of people are going out and trying to do it themselves. They're
Yeah.
out there planting gardens where they've never planted gardens. They're they're experimenting. They got a few calves and might try to feed one out. They call the slaughterhouse, get a slaughter day, so they're actually kind of experimenting with this at home too. And hopefully a lot of this will stick and they can see that they can be more self-sustainable in agriculture, by themselves.
Right. Lisa, we were you're talking about internet or web sales. They're always huge for direct marketers. I know that that's how we get information to our customers. Should farmers try to set up their own website site, or should they just hire a professional to set up their website for them? What's your opinion on that?
Oh my goodness. Yes. So internet-based marketing is an amazing opportunity, but personally, I believe that a lot of that depends on you as a person, your farm business, and really your overall goals for where you want to be with your business. So if you're a person that's not very techy and you don't feel comfortable with the idea of a website, or just technology in general, then you're probably going to work with some other people to sell your items online, because it is a great opportunity that you definitely shouldn't just miss out on. But in those types of cases, I would really suggest a professional if you're not comfortable with tech. But if you do feel comfortable, it is a pretty simple process to just purchase a template-based website. Some people think about like Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, all of those things. Those are template-based, and use a cheap hosting provider. And some of them have discounts just because of the amount of people that are using their services, which is awesome. A lot of times you can find those just with a quick Google search or on YouTube and that kind of thing. And do that and get your stuff sold online. And I would recommend, if you're going to go that route, to definitely buy a pre-made theme that's visually pleasing. It matches your brand if you have one. And then it's also easy for you to use because it'll be a template-based system. Now that's really good if you're only selling a small amount of items, and you can just use an e-commerce plugin for that website. Of course, again, assuming you're a little bit techie, make sure you have some sort of security certificate, and that way you have a secure customer checkout. A lot of times you'll want to add like a PayPal feature in there, which can connect directly to your business bank account. And so there's also like back-end security measures to make sure that people aren't trying to hack your website and get your information, which of course, if you watch the news at all, is a huge issue and has been even worse, I think, because of the pandemic. There's all these like ransomware issues, but cybersecurity in general is just a big deal. And I know as a customer, I look for those security certificates whenever I go to check out. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you pull up a web browser, Google Chrome or Firefox or Safari or whatever you're using, in the top left where URL is, there will be just a little lock. That is your security key, or your security certificate for that website. That means that there's a secure checkout and there is measures in place, so you feel comfortable and confident pushing like pay now and submitting your credit card information. Again, there's brute force hacking and stuff, but anyway, so if you're techie, then you can definitely do it. But if you plan on selling those products online as your main business and you're not comfortable with it, hire a professional. Just it's a little bit of an investment, but it'll be worth it in the long run. There's lots of people out there that do freelance work. If you are just wanting to get a site started, and then you could always keep them on retainer for those occasional updates that you might need. Or if you want, you could work specifically with a company that specializes in web design. It's also a great time to work on a business brand if you don't have one, and just make it a full package. If this is going to be your main outlet, if your version of direct marketing is web-based sales, then I would say hire a professional, because even if you have the expertise, some people just don't have the time. That is the biggest downside with direct marketing your product, is you are taking on that particular step, and you just have to unfortunately figure out how to build that in to everything else that you're already doing, right? All of those production steps, all of that record keeping, the business management. So yes, hire a
Lisa,
professional.
Lisa, one of the biggest questions I get from producers, especially smaller producers like here in Jackson County, is what about labeling? What about stuff that you have to put on your product? You know, what do they need to look at in that area as well when they're looking at this business plan?
So labeling is a huge thing. And if you haven't gathered this already, I definitely am a big believer in branding and labeling and marketing and packaging. So not only does a label keep you in compliance on the regulatory side, but it also is setting your product apart from your competition. So when I or any customer walks into a store and I have 10 different types of jelly to choose from and they're all blueberry, what is influencing your decision? So you're automatically going to be brand loyal if that particular product is available. But if not, if you have all of these things that you've never seen before, like at a local store, then the consumer, they might be reading that label for ingredients if they have allergies or if they have particular things they're looking for and they're health conscious. They might be influenced by the design of your label, and there might be things on that label you can use to connect at a personal level. But the label needs to be readable. That's a huge thing. Whenever I go to a store and I see a label that's not readable, I don't look at it. I'm not going to pick it up. It's automatically glossed over subconsciously by my brain. And then if your farm has any types of certifications, if you fall under a certification program, those also can influence decisions depending on how familiar the customer is with that program and their trust in it. So that's a big issue. That's a big thing. So if you are selling eggs and you go to the local store, like not necessarily a big box or a chain, we're talking like an independent grocery type of situation, like the Wild Ramp, right, down in Huntington. So if you go there and you are picking eggs out, if you are selling those eggs, you could always put a label on that says you have pasture raised chickens, you're using non-GMO feed, you have cage-free animals, naturally grown. Maybe you're under the animal welfare approved program, certified humane, if you're under USDA organic, any of those particular things. Some of them have claims and they're not regulated, like the word natural is not regulated in any shape or anything like that. But then others do. So USDA organic, like if you're putting the word organic on your product, you better be organic certified under USDA, or use a different word. If you use organic practices, but you are not certified, make sure that is very clear, because not that your smaller farm is going to be a target. However, you could actually be fined for using the word organic and not be under the program. So I just tell people, like, eliminate that risk and put like beyond organic, or put no spray, because people think organic means no chemical, and that is not what that means. Anyway, that's my soapbox. So use those claims to your advantage if you're under those particular programs, or just use some of those claims that don't have any kind of regulation behind them. Not always the customer knows that, but that can be to your advantage. But it also can sway the decision of the customer and what they're looking for and their trust in that product. So that is thinking about selling in stores or selling from a farmer's market, a CSA, whatever that is in person. If you're engaged in those direct to consumer internet-based marketing businesses, then your label is going to be one of the only experiences that your customer has with your farm and getting to know you and what you're about. So in that particular case, a lot of times you're going to want to leave a space on that label to tell a story, or put something in the package, something to tell them the story about your farm. And that's just a really common practice to really help develop that relationship and build that trust. And not that this question's really about packaging, but that's also an important factor, especially when using internet-based marketing, to make sure that the product that people are getting in the mail, there's certain expectations with that. So you want to make sure that you also have nice packaging if you're doing internet-based sales.
Lisa, I talking about the organic. Um, I read some earlier research that because you were talking about using the word natural, and they've done several surveys, but people will they'll kind of look at the word natural or fresh as almost the same thing as organic, which kind of to me almost kind of takes some of the thunder away from all the work you have to do to get certified organic. But what do you think about that as far as the labeling, using natural or fresh or some of those other ones instead of organic?
I think it's appropriate. I mean, it's something that people are doing at every scale, no matter whether you're a small farmer or you're a corporate. And it's granted, it's a term that is thrown around. Well, those are terms that are thrown around quite a bit. But if you're not USDA organic, do not use that on your packaging. Just don't do it. If you use organic practices, then that's a conversation that you can have with your customer, and I think you definitely should, just because it is spreading education and awareness about what that program actually is, and if you know the history of it and that kind of thing. But I am all for using verbiage as with your packaging or with your product that makes sense. And you can use that on things like banners at your booth if you're doing a farmer's market, or use it at your store. I mean, people put signs up that say farm fresh eggs all the time, right? And I don't know what a non-farm fresh egg is.
Well, Kroger says their new tagline is fresher than fresh. So it's not just fresh from the farm; it's fresher than fresh. So
I'm
They're still warm, JJ, when you get them there.
oh my.
fresher than fresh. How do you get more fresh than fresh?
I think you have to
Yeah.
own the chicken at that point. I and be there when the egg pops out. I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
But and those are, I mean, those are all like war feely things that people put on their packaging, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, anything to make your customer excited about your product. I know one of the ladies or one of the farms locally, they put like happy eggs from happy chickens, and they put little smiley faces and stuff on their packaging. And I mean, it's whatever you are trying to convey to your customer. And I don't know, fresher than fresh. I mean, if you want to come up with a cute tagline, that's perfectly fine. It all comes down to what kind of effort you want to put into selling your product and what you're trying to convey about your particular business to other people.
And on the organic side, there's a producer here in Kanawha County, and he's a friend of mine. And he does all the organic practices, but for the cost it cost him to get it certified organic for his operation, it's just not practical for his personal operation. So he calls it natural, and everybody that goes to him and purchases produce from him knows that he's pretty much organic. He follows the practices, but he cannot market it as organic. And I think that was a way he can kind of divert some of that cost in his operation by calling it natural, and it works well for him and his operation, and his customers really like it.
John David, that is an excellent point and an excellent example. In West Virginia, if you're interested in organic, that's great. If you want to go through the paperwork and the costs associated with it, I would definitely recommend that any farm look at the organic certification cost share program that's available. It helps with those annual certification costs that are associated with the program, which I mean, it is a lot. It's like $1,000, right? And that cost share program, I think helps. I think it helps cover. I think it's about 75% of those costs. So it still is an expense, but it won't be quite as detrimental to your bottom line. Now, If you are interested in organic, there are third-party certifications that you can look into. So for that individual that really wants to do organic, one of the things, and I'm not trying to promote any particular program here, there's several, but one of them that I know about locally, and I know several farmers that do participate in it, is Certified Naturally Grown, where it has very similar standards for organic, but instead of having that third party certifier that USDA works with, and having a lot of those extra fees and that kind of thing, it is farmers that basically work together collaboratively, and they verify farm practices on each other's farms. So you would have a handful of people come over and you would go through that inspection on your particular farm. That's something that and it helps reduce a lot of those costs, but it still allows for a label on your product that can be seen as a trusted label by certain groups of people. That particular label I see a lot at like the farmers market, so that's always something you can look into. Again, if you are interested in adding additional labels to your products, there's lots of different types of options that exist out there, depending on what you want to do for your particular business. So check those out.
Yeah, Lisa, profitability is something that sometimes we should talk about more often. I know that I can still remember, this was probably at least 10 years ago, that I went to it's similar to what we do at the small farm conference, but it's up towards, it's in Toledo with um, the National Direct Marketing Association. But there was a guy from Michigan State talking about, well, he was from Michigan, but talking about he had a sweet corn. He had a diversified farm, but sold sweet corn, and was talking about a lot of his complaints. He had raised some of his prices, but he said, taking into account that he needed to keep his business profitable. Give us some advice on pricing our products, and then how we convey that to our consumers or our customer base.
So I am not the pricing expert, but my recommendation would be to actually do a budget, do an enterprise budget, do a budget for that product. You just got to do it. And as tempting as it is, and I know people do this, to price your products by what your neighbor is selling them for is not the best path forward for profitability. It is not, because there's a very good chance your neighbor is doing the same thing and they don't know what it takes to be profitable. And that is the name of the game here, people. So you want to take all of those costs into account for that particular thing that you are producing. Just look at all of your inputs, and if you need guidance on that, you can always reach out to Extension. There are a ton of sample budget sheets that exist out there through a variety of Extension services. So if we don't have it, check out the Center for Crop Diversification from UK. OSU has them, Maryland has them. All of these extension services have different types of budgets depending on what you're growing. So make sure you take your own labor into account. That is something that is extremely variable. And a lot of people don't think about paying themselves, which is really unfortunate, because if you started working for another company and they said, oh, I'm not going to pay you for your time, you wouldn't work there, right? So make sure you pay yourself also. And then after you put all of that information together and do that budget, if your product is outrageously expensive compared to other people, then you need to look into that. Talk to of course, talk to those neighbors about whether or not they're doing that budget. But if you talk with some of those senior farmers or the people that have been doing it a while, and talk to extension folks and other service providers, like figure out what those efficiencies are that might be missing. Or maybe you're not getting the bulk discount for that input that you should be getting. And because everybody else is part of like the calf pool or part of a co-op or part of a group that's doing bulk purchases of egg cartons, because those are expensive. Like there's a reason that people are selling eggs at $5 a dozen, because 50 cents of that directly is from the egg carton, right? So work with your neighbors and figure out what some of those efficiencies are that you need to reduce those input costs for your farm. And I say this knowing that the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, which is now called PASA, they actually just released a study recently that they conducted with farmers across Pennsylvania, looking at their bottom lines. And honestly, it was it was a little disheartening to see that if, as a direct marketer, if you do not take these efficiencies into account for your farm, you are not going to be making a living wage as a business owner. You're just not. And it's unfortunate that that is the result of the study, but it's also showing how important it really is to look at your scale, how much product you're selling, what types of efficiencies exist for your particular product that you may or may not be taking advantage of, and working all of that out. And that way your business is profitable, because if you're not, then you're just in an expensive hobby, and your hobby's only going to last so long, because eventually you're going to run out of money. And that is not what we want. That is not the goal. We want you to stay in business, whether your reason for existing is profitability or whether you have a social mission for your farm. I want you to continue selling product. I want you to be successful, whatever success looks like for you. But
Yeah, Lisa, I think that you're exactly right. That I always tell farmers or producers, don't. I think sometimes that we as farmers, we're afraid to charge too much. And I talk to people all the time that they're like, well, I can't charge that much for my hamburger, or I can't charge that much for my tomatoes or whatever you're selling. I just don't, my customers won't pay that much, or, and they don't consider inflation, consider increasing cost of fuel and labor and insurance and all that stuff. And don't be, my always advice to producers is don't be afraid to charge. You pay $20 for a pizza with everything on it. Now it's $22. A pair of high dollar tennis shoes, clothing, all that kind of stuff. Our cars and trucks. So don't be afraid to charge. And also, you said exactly right. We need to know what our costs are, so then that we know whether or not we're making money on some of these sales.
And
Hey,
JJ,
Jay, let's throw Brian Wickline a bone here.
Okay.
Brian Wickline has a program called Transform, and it's set up for beef cattle. So if anybody out here looking, to kind of find where your bottom line is, your break-even price, and they tell you the rate of return on your cows, you need to get in touch with the extension here, and we can get you in touch with Brian. And he will put, it works off your Schedule F, off your taxes, put all your information in, and then after you do that, it will tell you where your problem areas are. You have too much money here, too much money there. This is your break-even price. This is what you need to be selling it to make a profit. So that is a great tool for beef cattle producers that not many people have utilized at this point. I've had several run through it here in Jackson County, but let's keep that in mind. Get with your extension agent. And another thing, Lisa, that I'm not going to ask you this because I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I want you to kind of put this in the back of your mind and kind of mill on it a little bit. I had a discussion, I can't remember who it was with now, a while back. It says, how do we compete with hobby farmers as in production that doesn't matter what they're making? It doesn't matter if they make money, they enjoy it. They're putting it out there in the market. And so how do you compete with a person that, doesn't matter if they make money or not? And in a lot of the cases, especially, I see it hurting the sheep industry a lot. So how do we as producers is trying to make a living compete in that market with those individuals? So kind of put that in the back of your head, because I think we're going to have to address that in the future, because that problem is growing every day.
I won't dive too deep into that right now, John David. So one, the program that Brian's working with, maybe that's something we should have a small farm conference. So we'll put that as a note. But for hobby farms, the IRS is no longer really supporting all of the wonderful allowances that they previously did when it came to a hobby farm. Which is a no-no term. It is no longer a term that we'll be using for a variety of reasons. I mean, even so, if you and the situation in West Virginia that what we know is most people have an off-farm job. So you have to have a separate job to support your hobby farm habit, or just in general, your farm. In general, that is what most people do. Probably because they're not looking at their efficiencies and how to actually be a profitable business. But that being said, previously for your taxes, you were given certain allowances as a hobby farm. You didn't have to be profitable for tax purposes. That is no longer the case. IRS and the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, a lot of that has taken away all of those things. You need to show profitability now. As of
That's good.
Like the 20, I think it was officially the 2017, so into 2018. So now you can't just show a loss every single year for multiple years if you are filing that Schedule F. Now, if you're not filing, that's a different story. And if that's the case, then you're either avoiding the IRS or you're making under the amount every single year to file, which is like $600. So you're either a tax evader, which is illegal, or you're not selling enough to really make a huge impact in the grand scheme of things, in my mind. Because if you're selling like a couple $100 worth of stuff a year, then you shouldn't be making like a big difference to everybody around you, I guess is where I'm getting with that. But yeah, that's a different discussion that we can have
Yeah,
at
I mean,
some point.
somebody brought that up, and I said that's kind of intriguing. I never really thought of it that way. I knew the hobby farms and all that, they're getting less popular probably due to the tax, changes. But I've never really thought about it in that way, and those competing with, agricultural producers in that market. So yeah, that's some good points that you make, and I'm kind of makes me feel a little better, and because it's already hard enough to be an agricultural producer in today's world.
Yeah, we're starting to wind down here, Lisa. But one of the questions that I think this one's pretty important. Not agricultural products, but in general, how do we get more people to buy local? Lisa, are you still with us?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the question is, how do we get more people to buy local? Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's kind of a tricky question, partly because there is no agreed upon definition for what is local.
Is it
The
within
US,
200 miles, or is that
no, so and this is
what
actually
is local?
something,
I guess.
right? So the question is, what is local? That is why this question is tricky. So the USDA actually uses a 400-mile radius for the term local. And if you think about how people say, oh, well, on average, your food comes from 1,500 miles away, which I don't know about everybody else, but where I'm located in Morgantown, 1,500 miles makes my food average about Utah. That's how far away my food comes on average. So for USDA, they're like, well, local is going to be 400 miles. And I don't know where they came up with that number, but that is the term that they use for their particular local radius. In my mind, that is regional. So again, where I live in Morgantown, 400 miles is into Canada, just over the line into Canada, and that's down to South Carolina for me. That's That's a huge radius in my mind. Again, I have biases when I talk about this. I used to work at a farmer's market. Our definition of local for our farmer's market was 50 miles. And that's still where I'm located. I'm 7 miles from the Pennsylvania border, and I am less than 30 miles to the Maryland border, right? So 50 miles gets you not quite to Pittsburgh, not quite to Cumberland, and right around Elkins. That's my 50-mile, as the crow flies, air radius, right? So really, I guess part of the question is, what is your definition of local? Under our West Virginia Department of Agriculture, they have a West Virginia grown program, right? So the idea is there that you are producing within state lines, and under that particular program, your product needs to be totally produced, grown, or manufactured within West Virginia, or the caveat for that part is, or you must have 50% of your value added product happening here in the state. So you could go to a produce auction in Ohio and bring your product in to West Virginia and then produce it here, and you could still get that sticker. So is that local enough for you? I don't know. So that, and part of that again goes back to your customer, that consumer, and what their trust is with those brands and that label. So is the West Virginia Grown program, is it a trusted label? Is that important for people's values? Is it something that they recognize? If it is, then that's an awesome opportunity for our producers to use that logo. And I think that's something that we don't have enough information on. In general, I know that there are strong trends and there is data that shows that these local and regional food systems, that they are proven, and large quantities of data, not just like random little ones, but like nationally, we know there's an importance by consumers to look at local products, whatever that is, for their particular definition. And I think that works for encouraging people to choose local first. But we really, we need more research to back up claims and to talk about what is local and figure out what that is to a consumer. Is it that 400 miles? Is it within West Virginia? Is it actually hyper local, where local is just within your community? So I think we really need to analyze what a consumer preference is to really kind of boost those, because there are those buy local campaigns, right? But what does that look like? I feel like in West Virginia, because of our culture, it's probably within a certain county area, but I don't have that data to back up
Right.
my hypothesis, my guess, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the hyper local, maybe that's a new term. Um, but just briefly, the power of branding. There was in the 1940s, there was the Broughton family here in the Mid Ohio Valley started a small milk processing plant. I think about 25 years ago, they sold out. Broughton's was the company got built up and it was a pretty good sized processing plant. You know, they had Broughton's milk and their cottage cheese and their one of their biggest items was their potato chip, the French onion dip. But anyway, so 25 years ago, this company sold to another company, and then it sold again here about 5 years ago. But they still have hung on for certain products to that Broughton's brand. And I hear people all the time will say, well, Broughton's milk or Broughton's French dip, that's the best. I go to this store over here sells it, and I drive clear over there to get it. And I don't want to burst their bubble and tell them, you know, Broughton's went out of business 30 years ago. But so there is a branding can have a big impact on sales, definitely.
Yeah, and that is a known thing that is used all the way at every single scale. I mean, if you think about some of the massive corporations out there, like Coca-Cola, right? I know some people hate Coca-Cola, but Morgantown's a Coke town, so that's my reference here. But even there, if you look at the iterations of their logo or their graphic, that logo over time, it does have changes, but it only changes a little bit every like decade or so, and it is known. Like, people know whether they like Coke versus Pepsi, right? That is, and they use that to their advantage and put it all over everything. So granted, most of the farms we're going to be working with, they're not at that particular level, which is probably for the best, but not everybody likes them. But at the same time, that just goes back to how important your label is. If you have a website, which I encourage people to have websites, but what that looks like, and everything about your farm's identity, whether that is people coming to your farm and what the sign at your entrance looks like, or your farm store or your farm stand 2 miles up the road from the farm, whatever it is that people see and associate with your farm, I feel like it needs to be consistent. But it also, I mean, you cannot, I don't think we can overemphasize too much, especially if you are a multi-generational farm, or you plan on having a farm that continues for decades, which I hope you do. It's important to have those relationships. People will travel to come to your location. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the agritourism side of things, because that's a different discussion that'll be happening soon. But that people will come to you. You know, I again live in Morgantown, and we were talking about the lack of U-Pick operations. I have a friend down in Charleston that asked me where she can go do U-Pick apples. And I honestly can't direct her anywhere, because I'm like, I don't know. And that is something that, like, here where I live in an area that's fairly urban, that is something that people around me are desperate for. People want to come and give you money. They want to buy your products. They want that experience on the farm. It's severely
You're
lacking.
saying that there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities. Yes, the only U-Pick in my area is like blueberries, which the season for that is so short. You know, I need somebody to do strawberries in the spring, and blueberries in the summer, and where are my pumpkin people? I need to come out to your area
Where's
for
your pumpkin
pumpkins. You know, those are things that consumers they want to give you money for, right? And there's so many ways to add additional value to your farm by having not only the experiences, but everything that goes along with it. If someone's coming out to your place, you know, diversify your products, have some shelf stable stuff, because we were talking about profitability, that's going to help your bottom line. Are you doing honey or maple syrup or apple butter, or maybe you're into non-perishable stuff and you're doing the bath bombs and the soaps and all of that? I mean, and those are things that you can sell online across the country to really, I mean, if you feel like your local area has got too many farmers markets and it's just flooded with local product, well, one, you're lucky. That's awesome. But but two, like, expand your customer base. If you take advantage of those online sales, there are over 300 million people that could potentially buy your product, right? And then you can definitely have that successful business, because the world is your oyster at that point. People from all over can buy your product and experience your business, and you can tell people about what you're about. I mean, and I'm a consumer. I buy local products at Christmas and I send them to my family, and I put your business card in those gifts packages that I give. And then sometimes they go, "Oh my gosh, that was so amazing." And then they follow up. That I'm a sticky customer. So I speak from experience, you know? Really, I think the opportunities are they're out there and they are endless. It is all about how limited your imagination is and your time. Really, really, it comes down to your time. what you want to have in the way of long-term success for your business. So
Lisa, it's go ahead, Evan. I was going to ask any questions, and I know I accidentally cut you off a while ago, so go for it.
It's fine. So I know you get a lot of ideas, questions come your way, at least from throughout the state and maybe the region. What are some new innovative ideas that people have came up with that they're trying to raise, sell, market, value-added products that's kind of interesting that may work for West Virginia?
Oh gosh, I get some interesting ones. And I don't know if they all would work. I love the girl that came to me and wanted to start a snail farm and sell snails for escargot. I thought that was so unique. But I had a hard time giving her a ton of advice. I mean, I could talk to you about the general business and marketing and that kind of thing. But locally, there weren't a lot of people buying snails for escargot. So that is definitely more of an international market kind of thing. But again, her imagination was not limited whatsoever. Things that are a little more realistic. I know I was fortunate enough to work with Liz Riffle with Riffle Farms whenever she first came to West Virginia. She has a bison farm out in the Terra Alta area, and she has really her imagination is not limited for her business. Not only did she want to do production and was really interested in just grazing her bison, but she has taken on the idea that people are really interested in where their meat comes from. So they host not only agritourism events and weddings and all kinds of things, but they invite people out in those farm to table dinners. They invite people out and teach them about what it looks like to break down parts of a carcass. And they work with other farmers in their area and lend out their space and say, we'll do chickens, we'll do hogs, we'll teach you about bison. And while you're here, we also have a shop if you want to buy hides, if you want to buy skulls, if you want to buy our meats, all of these wonderful things. And I know she originally discussed with me that they're interested in selling beef, or not beef. They're interested in selling their ground bison in the future for burgers. So there's a type of restaurants there. There's all these potential opportunities. I mean, they could start a food truck if they have the time or just want to hire somebody. So I mean, I don't think your imagination should be limited. And the things that you could potentially do. And you don't have to raise bison. You can raise any kind of animal. I would encourage people to check out goats. That is a very untapped market opportunity, small ruminants in West Virginia. And so if you want to do that, let me know, because we have a professor here at West Virginia University that is they have started a Central Appalachia fiber shed, and they're trying to get producers together. So if you're doing hair sheep, that's great. If you're doing wool sheep, that's also fantastic, because they're wanting to make blends. We're trying to figure out how to add value to wool, mixing it with hemp fiber and all these wonderful opportunities. So yes, contact me, because we're making like small supply chains, but you don't have to just work in like one area. All of those things are possible within your communities. I would just encourage you to work with your neighbors and figure out, and if you don't feel like the market is there, you can move it a little bit further, right? We are in an amazing location in West Virginia. We have very cheap land compared to the rest of the Northeast and really the rest of the East Coast. We are within 2/3 of the population where we're located. If you think about how close we are to New York and DC, not that you have to sell outside of your area, but you can. It's an opportunity that exists. So we are so lucky to be in the situation that we are in. We have water, that it rains all the time here. We don't have necessarily the same weather that California does, but man, not having wildfires and having water without having to buy water credits, everybody should consider themselves just like blessed to be in West Virginia. And again, work with your neighbors, and don't have a limited imagination. Just like go out and do it. And if you need ideas, I'm happy to just talk your ear off, obviously.
Lisa, we've got to we've run over here a little bit, but I always have another question. My dad said that there's two kinds of music, country and western. So we have to ask you who your favorite country artist is. You
So
are a big country. Go ahead.
I like Western places and enjoy country music. So I grew up, I had a lot of experience with 90s and like 80s country music. Um,
Those
and
are
I
good
was
times.
fortunate enough to see like Tim McGraw, so he has a very special place in my heart whenever
Okay.
I was youngin'. But Shania Twain's probably my girl. Like I love her
Oh,
to death. She is just like for me, she was like a symbol of female empowerment, but also and she's just amazing. But she also can sing like her, and she's not the same kind of country music as everybody else enjoys, I'm sure. But like every time, man, I feel like a woman comes up on the radio, I am dancing in my car. I get up, I dance wherever it is. I just like gotta boogie around the room. Yes.
feel like a woman. Yep, Shania Twain. She was good. She was good. Do we have any questions from the audience, Evan, before we um, sign off here?
I don't see any in the chat. Audrey, do y'all have anything up there? I think Ritchie County. Any questions? Looks like we have
Quietly
Gardner
preaching to
back
the
from last
choir.
week as well, which is good to see.
Yeah, real quick then. Next Friday, we're talking about agritourism in West Virginia with Dr. Dee Knights. She's our Extension Agribusiness Economics and Management Specialist for WVU Extension. The 22nd, Brad Burgiford and Lewis Jett are going to be with us for growing specialty crops. So we may be talking about some hops, pumpkins, strawberries. Friday, October 29th, Women in Agriculture is our topic. And we're going to have Brandy Brabham, Emily Morrow, and Stacy Huffman from WVU Extension. And just reminding everyone that programs and activities offered by WVU Extension are available to all persons without regard to race, color, sex, disability, religion, age, veteran status, political beliefs, sexual orientation, national origin, and marital or family status. So, and we want to thank our special guest again, Lisa Jones. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I had such a wonderful time chatting with you all today. Appreciate it.
Great. JD, sign us off, buddy.
All right. Thank you for joining in to the Mountaineer Farm Talk, the voice of West Virginia agriculture. Until next time, we'll see you around the ridge.